Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I am Susanna Thomas with Americans for Contraception, North Carolina, and we are here today to talk about the ongoing threat to reproductive freedom and the importance of protecting the right to contraception. As many of you may know, North Carolina Congresswoman Kathy Manning introduced the Right to Contraception Act 2 years in a row. Last year, all of North Carolina's Republican members in the House voted against the bill. This year, members of the North Carolina General Assembly have also taken the fight on and have introduced bills in both the House and Senate to protect the right to contraception. Today, we are joined by members who have co-sponsored that bill in the Senate, Senator Rachel Hunt and Senator Natasha Marcus. We are so grateful for their support in this fight. We're also joined by pastor and activist Reverend Ray McKinnon. We thank each of you for being with us today to offer your perspective on this important issue. What we'll do today is we'll hear remarks from each of our speakers, and then there will be a time for question and answer at the end. Again, thank you so much for being with us today, and we will begin with Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Susanna. We have introduced this bill, Senate 540, because of the threat that states would be empowered by the Supreme Court to limit access to the use of contraceptives, just as Justice Thomas foreshadowed. Nearly 600,000 North Carolinian women live in contraceptive deserts, which means they have significant barriers to birth control. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade means that lawmakers must act now to preserve rights fundamental to protecting our bodily autonomy and the ability to determine our own futures. If passed, our bill, S540, would codify access to life-saving medication and prevent extreme politicians here in North Carolina from restricting access to contraceptives. And it would ensure that any future attempt by the far-right majority on the Supreme Court to overturn Griswold would not endanger access to this essential health care. It's time for North Carolina Republicans to listen to their constituents and the 90% of Americans in favor of contraception and pass this crucial legislation before it's too late.
Thank you so much, Senator Hunt. I couldn't have said it better myself. We'll turn it over now to Senator Marcus.
Hello, thank you, everyone. I'm Natasha Marcus. I represent Senate District 41 in Mecklenburg County. I appreciate your interest in this topic. It's so important to me as a woman, as a mother of 2 daughters, to know that we as women have the right, the fundamental right, to control our reproductive choices. And access to contraception is key among the ways in which we can make choices for ourselves and our future. Unintended pregnancies are not at all rare. In fact, by some estimates, about half of all pregnancies are unintended. And that's under current laws when access to contraception is not being denied for various political reasons. We know that unintended pregnancy leads to emotional and economic stressors. We know that childcare shortages are real and very serious. We know that abortion bans now in place in North Carolina have removed choices that we once had related to how to handle an unintended pregnancies. We know that economic stressors on families, especially right now, are real. We know that maternal and infant mortality rates in North Carolina are way too high. And we know that access to affordable health care in North Carolina is difficult for many people, and for too many people, impossible. So knowing all that, we have to understand the importance of Senate Bill 540, which I filed together with my colleague on the presser here today, Senator Hunt. We also filed not just the bill, but we filed a discharge petition to try to get the Republican supermajority to allow the bill to be debated and come up for a vote. We also filed it as an amendment to House Bill 190, which was a terrible bill that further restricted abortion. And we thought that was the right time to add in, let's acknowledge a fundamental right to access to contraception. All these things we've done because we would like our fellow legislators to acknowledge our fundamental rights and to put to rest any concerns about their wishes or their plans to infringe on our rights about when and whether to be pregnant. And I will note that many people did not think that abortion rights were in jeopardy until it was too late, and they were wrong. So this is one of those cases in which we are looking forward and trying to be, aware of what might be coming. We know that the Supreme Court could overturn Griswold. That was decided in 1965, and return us into a time when contraception was either banned or only available to certain people based on conservative social norms called morality laws, right? And without federal protections, Griswold could just go the same way that Roe v. Wade did. And rights that we thought were guaranteed, rights that we think are basic American rights, would be gone. The Supreme Court has hinted that that's what it wants to do. Clarence Thomas in particular. Most GOP US Congress members voted against the Right to Contraception Act at the federal level. The North Carolina Republican Party won't allow debate or a vote despite our discharge petition on the bill that would basically just state that it's a right for us to access contraception. And then, of course, our leading GOP candidate for governor here in North Carolina is aggressively anti-freedom for reproductive choices. He's aligned with the March for Life organization. He has said that he would like to, quote, keep the ball rolling. After the abortion ban, he wants to keep the ball rolling. Well, what does that mean? That, that sends up red flags to those of us who want to keep our rights. We know that many states are already attacking the right to contraception, including Florida, Virginia, nearby Virginia, Ohio, and other places. So it's already happening. And for me, again, it is frightening to live in a state run by these extreme Republican voices who seem hell-bent on controlling female bodies and our reproductive choices. So I hope voters will pay attention and realize that a vote for Republicans is a vote to give them more control over our bodies and reproductive choices. We need federal protections and we need state level protections. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this today, and we'll hand it over back to you, Susanna.
Thank you so much, Senator Markins. We really appreciate that in-depth analysis, and you put it very well. None of us were thinking that abortion was really going to be taken on, and it is scary. And so we certainly want to make sure that people are aware that there are bills active in North Carolina, that there are people like you both fighting for this. I'm going to turn it over now to Reverend Ray McKinnon, and we'll hear from him.
Thank you, Susanna. I'm Ray McKinnon, and I serve as pastor at Sacred Souls United Church of Christ in Charlotte. I'll leave the politics this time to my friends, the senators, and I want to give a perspective from a faith perspective. And I think it's important, although I am a reverend and a minister, and I think it's important for us to recognize that although we might have folks might have deeply held convictions in a pluralistic society where we live, my faith or another's faith should have no bearing on what happens in state government. And I recognize that it does sometimes. And I want to say, as a man, as a minister, I think there's something incredibly immoral about limiting women's choices on one end, and then limiting their choices even further on another end, and then just say, we're doing it out of a sense of deeply held convictions. I think there's something deeply immoral for, frankly, a party that not only forces people to have continue in a pregnancy that maybe they are not ready, they cannot carry, and then they limit afterwards the care that could be available to them. I think there's something incredibly immoral to limit women's choices and other people who have pregnancies choices, and force then a birth, and then to limit the access to care that we have. There is something very immoral about saying to a person they are forced to do something that they do not either think they can do or they just don't want to do. I don't believe there should be a reason because you are a whole person who can make your choices. I say, as a minister, that it is our jobs to ensure that we are not limiting the perspectives and the voices and the choices of any person. It is our jobs as leaders to pull back and to be fair. We know that the limiting to 6 weeks of abortion already limits people who get pregnant options. It is unfair and it is immoral now to potentially to not even allow them to do forward planning, to say, I know I'm not at a place where I want to have a child, but because of your faith, but because of something you think, we're going to limit other people who have pregnancies. I call on more folks to join Senators Marcus and Hunt in standing up for the rights of adults who can make choices already about themselves. And I call on my friends on in the GOP who have deeply held convictions and beliefs to ask themselves, is this something that truly is moral? Is this something that truly is what we are called to do? And if you are going to be so dogmatic on this issue, I hope you go the whole way. Do not force something and then limit people's options and then say, if you couldn't take care of the child, why did you have the child? I think there is something incredibly immoral about a party who wants to do that and then do it out of a sense of deeply held conviction. So I applaud, I support this legislation, and I'm grateful that we have leaders like Senator Hunt and Senator Marcus and others who are fighting to protect the rights of folks to have access to contraception.
Thank you so much, Reverend. And thank each of you for being here today and lending your perspective and talking about the importance of this legislation, which again, could be moving if we could get a little bit of help from our folks across the aisle. I want to open it now to any of our members of the press. You are welcome to ask questions. We're here to answer. And so I'll open the line to that now. All right, hearing none. Well, then we'll just say thank you again for being with us today. We look forward to continuing this conversation and continuing this fight. And we just need more folks to join us in this because, again, it's incredibly important and it will limit lives even further in a state that's already dealing with, like Senator Marcus said, difficulty with affording access to healthcare, with getting contraception in some of these areas where it's just not available to folks. And so we definitely need to protect this right. And so we thank you, each of you, for being with us today. Thank you all.